Okay, welcome to Quantum Leap Live with Dave and Cory, and I'm excited to have Cory back today. And Cory was actually just making a note about my color being all off on my camera, which I am aware of. Unfortunately, I don't have a production crew here to do a little color adjustment. I, I thought of the analogy. It's like the guy at the one-man band, saying, that bass drum's a little, the tone's a little off. So, um, it's I know why it is, but we'll kind of work with it as it is. But anyway, how are you today, Cory? Welcome back. And how was your trip down to Disneyland and down to LA? Or where else did you go?
Yeah, good question. First of all, doing great. Sometimes I play with OBS Studio. I'm trying to figure that program out, and I can do all kinds of fun things with my color tones and so on, and I can't figure out how to get it back half the time. So I was trying to figure out how to make a green screen. And anyway, so yeah, we had a great time in Los Angeles. Went down to Anaheim for a week. Stayed at the Howard Johnson, which has a water park, so the baby got to play in the water a lot. And 3 days of Disneyland. What I don't know. It's a lot more fun with a toddler, I have to say. It's different. And then Galaxy's Edge, for those Star Wars fan, it is amazing. It is, if you want a really interesting experience, and the Rise of the Resistance, I don't know if you could call it really a ride. I guess it's a ride, but an amazing experience for anyone who's a Star Wars fan. So happy to give some tips on how to actually get in the queue for that.
Yeah, sounds great. I love going down to LA. I actually have a history of that's my spot to go. I used to go every 6 months or less, but and the girls are way overdue to go to Disneyland. So I'd love to take them down to Disneyland. The night stuff. I don't know if you went to the light parade or if your daughter stays up that late, but that's like the nighttime stuff's almost more fun for the adults, or as fun for the adults as the kids. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of a parade they're doing right now. We didn't really sit through that. We're more like, let's hit all the rides while everybody else is watching. And Kaden really loves the parrots, and she likes Small World, so it's an opportunity to do those too.
Oh, good. So yeah, I thought we could do just a brief check-in on our businesses, and then we have um, some topics to get through about really this concept of industry leader and becoming an industry leader. I wanted to get your thoughts on, and I know this is really something I got from you in large part, and all the things that you do, which we're going to go into. So we'll get to that. But it's been kind of a short summer, a fast summer in a lot of ways, but what have your priorities been with your business, or do you have anything kind of new to report that you're working on, or have planned for the future of your Lyft platform?
Yeah, we're focusing, of course, on growing Lyft. We're always kind of get onto those, like, hey, what's the next new thing we can do? But ultimately, we're adding a few things, but really mostly it's about how do we get more people involved. For us, it's marketing for leads. So we engaged a copywriter, which is really exciting because I just really like the way he works, and I knew him from many, many years ago. Reached out to see if he was still around, because we had hired a writer to help us kind of get all our ideas together, and then she helped us kind of mine our message, and the copywriter is to help us create the emails and everything else. And because it's how do you compel people to take the next step with us? And so that's what we're working on next, and then we can begin some online marketing campaigns, because for our platform it's really about numbers, or it needs to be about numbers. And so I'm excited. I'm hoping that we can bring in some new clients and people to work with. So that's really the focus of the business right now and through the rest of the year. And then I'm working on some mindset stuff. I've got some ideas I'm presenting in December on mindset hacks, I'm calling it. So nobody else is using that term, so I'm going to start using it. Mindset hacks on really how to just, adjust your own mindset and the mindset of others when needed to accomplish a task like a sale or marketing or helping a client.
Great. I love that term hack, and I feel like that's what a lot of it is in reality. So yeah, and I mean, I've really just been working on my goal of a long-term kind of reliable clients for ongoing long-term work, so it's so I can have a manageable schedule, but also do some traveling and do some other things. In my old career politics, I used to have it down where I could do work 1 or 2 days a week, and then the rest of the time I could go where I wanted. I
Right.
haven't gotten to that spoiled again, but I think it's something to aspire to, of how do we kind of make our ideal work life and still accomplish our goals. So, I still have some ways to go. I've really been focused a lot on just technique and becoming the best kind of video producer and editor that I can, and just breaking new ground there. And, of course, I have the podcast track, and then this new program, Industry Leader, which we're going to talk about. So I'll kind of save that for that. But, I'm excited to be back on the air with you and kind
Yeah,
of
me too.
grow together, so to speak, on a lot of these things that we do. I think it's so important to kind of share the things that we do as we do it, because a year from now, you almost totally forgot what you were dealing with at that moment, but that's like helpful to share at that moment. So, almost like journaling on the air, so to speak.
Right.
But anyway, I did want to, we're going to get to this about industry leader. And, this concept of industry leader, I really got from you and a lot of your teachings, although you don't really call it that. I'm a marketer, so I love, these kind of bold names with industry leader, quantum leap, ripple effect. That's just my style. But what do you see as an industry leader? What to you, what does that term mean? And what does it mean to lead your industry? And what does that look like?
Actually, I hate to throw this back at you like that, David, but I will. I'm going to throw this back at you because as you came up with the term, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about it. And then I'll share my thoughts about it. But I think yours, since, as I said, you did come up with the term, and, so for me, well, anyway, no, I'd like to hear you first.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And, this is something that I really is based on our business networking group, BNI. And I really see Ivan Meisner as our industry leader for small business. And, so those teachings, and there's anybody who's really a BNI person and knows a lot about it, which you do. You've taught me a ton about BNI, knows that there's so much that goes along with BNI. So it's really about being the top person in your industry. A lot of the people we know in our networks I see as industry leaders, and those people a lot of them are still in BNI. Some of them probably get maybe too successful for BNI. I hate to kind of say it like that, but I see why people would drop out of BNI at a certain level that, of their business. But, people like Declan Spring, or, as I see as a top realtor, of course, Mary Newberger in our chapter, these are leaders in their industry, and maybe they're not, Bill Gates or, Steve Jobs to that level. I mean, that's kind of like it's almost a whole different level. But if you're really a top producer in your industry, that's what I see as an industry leader. And the whole about how to get there is a whole different story. But, so I really came up with this concept in, my podcast called Industry Leader, to really explore this concept about, first, who are the industry leaders, and what are these commonalities? What are the things that make them an industry leader? And it's really about purpose and core values and skill, in your industry. So it's a series of these kind of commonalities of things that kind of come together.
Okay.
Hopefully that's not too long-winded. I hope I didn't leave anything important out, but yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, because I think, sometimes people can take industry leader as something kind of, big or kind of inaccessible to other people in the industry. But there's also, if you narrow down industry to being, who's in your niche, who's in your market, and who is it that you're serving, then you can be a leader within that. You can also be a leader within a network. So maybe, I happen to think that I am an industry leader in the sense of, where I bring the networking to for coaches and so on. And in fact, some coaches around the country from BNI have reached out to me about how they can better utilize BNI. And we have a mastermind going on that subject. And part of the reason they reach out to me is because I have a background, such a heavy background with BNI long-term and incentive as well, that I can help with that. So, I may not be a industry leader in coaching overall, but in terms of helping people grow their coaching business, I've got some knowledge that's pretty unique. And I think that's it can also, sometimes refer to people as thought leaders, right? How do we influence others? So, and I think the key word really is leader, right? It's not always about being the top or being, the most well compensated. That works really well in real estate. It can be a little different in some others where it's not as go-getter. Sometimes we have people on the creativity leadership, right? So we create things that other people use, or, we help people lead people to the right place. And so it may not always be about money, but it can also be about how we influence others and help the industry grow. I've had some clients who work in the alternative healthcare industry, and their business is reasonably successful, but where they lead is in helping the boards grow and leading their industry to gaining more mainstream acceptance. So that can also be an important aspect, and we should probably have one of those people on for your industry leader, or make the recommendation.
Yeah, and most of these people we're actually going to be bringing on Quantum Leap as opposed to industry leader, just because I want to have you on there as well. And the industry leader is another outlet. It's actually a paid platform for most people. But I did have a quick comment. I think the most important thing really is to just be that industry leader, and that kind of comes from within, and some of this internal, the work that we do. And I caution people about going out there and saying, from the mountaintops or whatever, I'm an industry leader, because that really turns people off. It's really important to just be an industry leader, but not even say much about it otherwise. I mean, I think, I call that podcast industry leader, but I don't really go around announcing that. It's really to give a platform to other industry leaders. I think I probably am an industry leader in certain fields that I no longer work in, such as politics and public policy. But, in video, I'm probably an emerging leader. So I think you said this about the field is so important, about that, we're not like a 10 out of 10 at everything we do, but ideally to be an industry leader, you got to be, a 10 would be kind of like Tiger Woods or whatever, LeBron James, you're the top in that field, but also you're a leader in that field. And that's a very interesting concept about, being the top technician. Maybe, you do programming, maybe there's a great programmer, but they're not an industry leader per se. Like, this concept of leadership is a totally different concept. To have both the technical aspect and the leading. And I think the leading really comes from this networking component, which was on my list, that I really think the essential ingredient, almost more important than, the actual technical talent, is this ability to lead. And that's leadership, be it public speaking, the network. Like, you have to have the network that industry leader has to be industry leader. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to comment on that. And we used to do a program on networking, and it had a name, which I can't really use anymore. So we've kind of adjusted over to become Lift Networking, or Lift Your Networking. But the idea that, if you want to reach a certain level in your industry, you definitely want to have expertise. You want to be able to walk your talk. And a lot of it is also going to be about how you network. And so let's say you wanted to reach the top in BNI, right? You wanted to network with Ivan Meisner. Some people would just, go straight to the top and make a phone call, and they won't get anywhere with it. And because it is a networking organization, it's all about relationships. And that's really true of any organization. So, you step up to be a leader within your chapter and then within the region, and you go to the conferences and so on, and you volunteer, you help out and things like that. And you'll find that those top people show up to those kind of things. And when they see you, being a part of that organization and practicing the giver's gain, which is one of the core values, then you start to become part of, that smaller circle and smaller circle, and to wherever you want to go with it. And and it's the same within any other organization. We've always taught that it's to network up is to move up within leadership uh, organically and with authenticity, right? And in fact, we did a program a few years ago where the coach came out on stage and he talked about how to network with billionaires, and I will incorporate that into a talk that we'll do about networking to that level. I haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to network with billionaires, but some pretty big names. But ultimately, it's really just about, it's what can you do for them, right? And it's not what you can sell to them, but it's what you can do for them. And I think that occurs at all levels if we're networking up to be seen as an industry leader, because then when you're around those people, you have that kind of influence.
Yeah, well put. And I don't know if you have any advice. I can share a couple notes I have about this, about how to become an industry leader. I do think Ivan Meisner's been influential on both of us. For example, you mentioned, yeah, Ivan, there's these stories on his podcast about how when he would meet some top person like that at a party, and maybe this was earlier in his career, maybe he didn't have quite the legendary status that he does now, but he would always think about how he could help that person first before they would do anything for them. And I think that is such a powerful concept, that how can we go out there and help other people, and what that will do for that relationship is huge. You never know how they can help you. You never know how you can kind of help them until you kind of get to know them. But to really go in there with that mindset is hugely valuable. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on how to get started. I mean, I, for example, think Lyft is a great place to start, that you don't really go into business as a new entrepreneur saying right off the bat, I'm going to be industry leader. You often say, I know Warren Buffett says you got to build a $200,000 business before you build $1 million business. So you got to be kind of just as, I want to be a successful small business owner first. And then once you get on that path, then you go, well, I want to be an industry leader. Maybe, nobody uses that language. That's my language, as you point out. But I think Lyft is really where I started, working with you and Lyft and BNI. So I don't know if you have thoughts on how people use those resources, or what you've seen out of people to kind of get them started.
Yeah, I think programs like our Lyft and so on that are fantastic for that, especially in terms of working, people who already have an expertise, right? They may already be an industry expert, but now to become a leader within that industry does require growing that business and growing that influence. And so it's learning, why would you want to do that? What is your, ultimate goal and objective? And then what is your strategy to get there? So, if you're going to do that through coaching and consulting, then our Lyft program is best for that. If you're going to do it through public speaking, there are some great public speaking programs out there. If you want to learn to become a paid public speaker, National Speakers Association is a good start. I've just been going through their academy, and you get to really hobnob with some pretty amazing names out there. So there's different ways. It kind of depends on how it is you want to be that industry leader. If you're, and I'd also look at, where are you putting your spare time? Your giving back time. So David, you're in Rotary. That's an excellent place to start networking up, because especially in a group like, Oakland number 3, where there's so many influential people from the community there. But it takes time, right? They're not going to really pay a whole lot of attention to you until you put time into committees. You show that you're there, you care, and you're giving and participating. And as they see you more and more, then you start to develop that credibility. And it's the same, I think, if you want to network up in your industry, is find where the top people in your industry are putting their time, and start putting time there. And that might be Rotary, so you start in your Rotary organization and you start looking, okay, how do I get into international Rotary? How do I meet with the kind of people who are going to get me where I want to go? And, be strategic, again, be authentic. If you're just going to do it and then give up, I think that's wrong. But if you're ultimately going to make this your lifestyle, I think it's a great way to go. Be strategic.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And these are a lot of the things that we went over early on in our coaching sessions that really kind of planted these seeds for me and made a big difference. I mean, you were my sponsor in Rotary and the whole reason why I joined Rotary initially. And that's been huge for, maybe not so much my business, but the building of that network that'll kind of get you to where you want to go. And you're right. It's so much about there's those 3 steps. What is it? Is exposure the first one, or people have to know you first? They have to like you and then they have to trust you, or what is it? No,
Yeah,
like, and trust. Yeah.
yeah, this know, like, and trust is really popular. I've always said that like may not be the most important thing. I think they have to know you and trust that you can get the job done. I mean, there are people I don't like that I would be happy to refer to and give business to just because I know that they're the best, right? And if they'll take care of the right people. But like is also important because then we think of them more often. But ultimately, to be seen as a leader, and leaders aren't always well liked, but they have to be known and trusted. And that's the most important thing.
I
Trust
mean,
is the big part.
Yeah, I know I always have this concept that, between 30 and 50% of people are just not going to like you no matter what. Maybe not that high, but there's a lot of differentiation in there, and, about what's the level of dislike. They do those polls about your favorability versus unfavorability ratings. So, those are all important concepts, but to be successful in business in your industry, you don't have to have everybody like you. You only need really that 5 or 10% that, you're going to have more than that. But anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent there. So, but it's important to consider. I think it's and why don't those people like you? A lot of those things there are things you can work on and make better. I think it's also a lot of it's about being misunderstood too. Sometimes people just that's one of the reasons why I actually started this podcast, or a podcast, to actually minimize like the dislike and kind of clear up more thing. But by just being on the air, you kind of show people who may not know you that you're not maybe what they may have heard about or something. So but
Yeah.
anyway.
I think some of the best advice I ever heard, and probably changed everything. And, so the reason we're talking today is, somebody I admire very much. And I have to say, I liked their lifestyle. I'm not saying that I wanted their lifestyle, but I wanted to be able to have what they would have. Right. And kind of like, you were talking about, okay, I want to work 2 days a week and I'd like to have a, successful business and all that. So you look at somebody who has that. And so her motto was, if somebody has what you want, do what they do. So then what do those successful people do? Right. And a lot of them, they give back their time. They do this kind of networking. They work on, self-development and self-actualization. They put a lot of time into learning about how to be more likable. There's certainly some people who are extremely successful who aren't likable, but a lot of them, and some of those people work very hard, and we don't want their lifestyles. But if you want that life where it's, a couple days a week, and you're very successful, then there's people coming to you to give you their business, then find somebody who does that, and then, find out how they do it and do what they do. And then you'll, if you keep following that practice, you'll learn some amazing skills rather than trying it from scratch, which so many people try to do. And I tried to do for 10 years, didn't really work for me.
Great. Well, let's return to this. And I know we're going to wrap up here. I see Pradna just joined us, who's going to be the second leg of this, but we really got to some, I think, powerful concepts that we're going to continue to explore. So if you have any closing thoughts, we can make those. Otherwise, I'm going to end this first segment of Quantum Leap, and we're going to start with Pradna here in just a couple minutes in part 2 of our Quantum Leap.
All good. Thank you.
Thanks.